Hi everyone, welcome to our Microsoft / Future Decoded chat that we're putting together today. And I've got two MVPs, Microsoft's most valued professionals, in the room. So I kind of feel like I'm the least valuable person here because I'm the only person that doesn't have the esteemed title that is most valued professional. But I shall try and keep up. And the key agenda for today is really talking about Microsoft events in general, and then sort of diving into some of the agenda and some of the key things that Microsoft are talking about in their events and at Future Decoded coming up, and the kind of areas that we're really interested in and what everybody on the line is going to be focusing on. So I'll start off with a little bit of a round table. Leslie, would you like to introduce yourself?
And I'm a digital transformation consultant at Mint Tulip, and I've been there a year, and it's been amazing. I've learned so much. So I came into this space as an MVP all about Yammer and user adoption for Yammer, but now I'm kind of working right across the Office 365 suite and helping our customers change their culture in a digital fashion, and I'm absolutely loving it.
Brilliant. And Simon?
Yeah, hi, I'm Simon Denton. I'm a business architect at Mott MacDonald, global engineering consultancy. Yes, I am an MVP, but it's a title at the end of the day. It's just I have a real passion and interest for technology and making technology best for people. So yeah, don't worry, Dan. You don't have the label. It really just is a lanyard. It might be a blue bad thing. You might end up with a trophy, but apart from that,
now I'm feeling worse. You've all got swag and t-shirts and all kinds of cool stuff, and I haven't got any of that. But
don't worry.
But let's sort of dip into that, because both of you use the word passion. I think passion is really, really important. I always like to kind of frame the conversation around, why everybody's in the room. So Simon, let's jump in. When you talk about passion around transformation and technology, can you delve a little bit into what brought that passion out of you, and why do you think it's so important to support that?
Yeah, sure. So my background is fairly non-traditional when it comes to IT. I guess, well, maybe who has a traditional IT background apart from the 15-year SharePoint developer? I don't know. Has SharePoint been around that long? The point is, by trade, I'm a civil engineer. My day job for, a long time was building things, from tunnels, railway lines, schools and everything in between. And that's a really pride-driven industry, right? It's really good. You walk past something, you touch, you go, I made that. I did that. I contributed to that. And when I moved into IT, I felt the same passion about, I made this. That button's in the right place, or I can see people using it, and you're ticked by the same motivators, actually. And so that's where my passion for IT comes from, is that, I've helped someone, I've built something. The pride is the driving factor in it.
No, I sort of felt the same as well. And especially when whatever you're offering to them, or you've built for them, or you're supporting them with, they're using that thing for hours and hours and hours every single day, right? It becomes a part of their life every single day. So ensuring that is something that really delivers, that works well, that you can be prideful about, it really is that impactful, because you're with that person almost all the time. And for me, that's what I really get the passion about. For me is the fact that the things that I'm developing and producing are touching people's lives, in a really, really significant way. How about you, Leslie?
Yeah, so my background, again, I always say I'm not techie, but then I must have some kind of technical knowledge to have got this far in the technical space. But I started out as a secretary. They don't use that word anymore. So I was a PA to senior leaders in some big companies, and I ended up always being the one that seemed to have taking on more work than anyone else around me in the secretary space. I was always interested in the new tech that was coming down the line, because I thought at the end of the day, it's going to save me time doing my job. So I was always one to kind of put my hand up with the IT guys and say, I'm going to be the guinea pig. Can I take part in this pilot, whatever it is, all the way along, thinking that it was going to save me time and effort, but not realizing at the end of the day that I was going to be the one to feel the pain points, being the early adopter. And I kind of just got used to always wanting to be the first one to know what the new tech was going to be, and being the champion to help other people around me and bringing them along. But often, they don't want to be brought along. They just want to stick with the same old. They don't like change, as we found, some people, and then there's others who are going to jump on it. So I've worked, being in a business support role, I was always working quite closely with the IT guys and girls, because I knew I needed to be friendly with them to move myself forward as well. So that's how I've ended up in the space I did around Yammer adoption in the global healthcare space. And I started working really, really closely with the IT guys. And by then I was working as a corporate communications manager. And that's how I've ended up where I am.
Oh, there you go. Well, thanks for the introductions. I think it's always good to get a bit of background, because we're going to be talking about some of the things that Microsoft has got going up, so I can kind of get a sense of what you might be leaning towards now. But just looking at some of the upcoming events that Microsoft has, and a lot of these are recurring annual events. And I know both of you have been to different ones of these, and I'm interested to sort of get your thoughts on what is it about each one of these events that you think is particularly inspiring, and why might people go, and what can they get out of each one? So yeah, we'll pick up on Ignite to start with, the huge flagship event. I personally haven't been to Ignite yet. I haven't been blessed enough to have gone. But Simon, is that something that you've attended?
Yeah, I've attended every Ignite since 2016.
Oh, well, there you go.
I'd say it's by attending Ignite, it took my learning from a very slow and steady pace to this just exponential curve, right?
Yeah.
It is baptism by fire is probably an understatement. I've been to trade shows and expos and all sorts of things before. I've never been somewhere so intense. Right. 20,000 people in one supermassive building. Microsoft tend to use the biggest conference centers in the world that they can find, usually in North America. These places are huge. They're a couple of kilometers long. Yeah, 20,000 people, thousands of different subjects. You end up with wanting to do 5 things in every hour time slot. But what you do is you learn so much, so much, not just from the sessions themselves, but the ability to ask questions, but also from the interacting with others and networking. You don't realize that once you sit in the breakfast hall and eat your body weight in bacon across the week, that there is 20,000 other people there who've got the same hopes, fears and aspirations for IT as you are, and they perhaps are on different journeys, but it is a steadily intense event. You need a holiday afterwards, and that's why I'm glad the last couple have been in Florida, because you really do need some downtime afterwards.
Right.
Yeah. And I think the organisers, the event management team, Anna Chu, that heads it up from our point of view as MVPs, it's an extraordinary pieces of logistical management to pull it all together, and to do it over and over again. Ignite the tours around, I don't know if it's about 25 countries, 25 cities around the world is amazing. And they say to us, there's about 10 sessions going on at the same time. And you can't be everywhere, but most of the sessions are now being recorded. But as Simon said, they remind you that it is about networking as well, and having those conversations. And if you need to go and rest up, people are coming from all around the world. People are jet lagged. It is exhausting. They say, rest up as well. There's evening events that are going on all the time, and have conversations with people, get to know people, connect with people through LinkedIn, and follow the hashtags on social media, and then watch the events afterwards in your own time. It's a massive thing. No one can get involved in everything that's going on there. It's far too big. But now, as we said, we've got the Ignite the tour. You can, if you can't make it to the big, I think it's 30,000 delegates. It's extraordinary. There's the local ones now as well, so which is great.
Yeah, so the main Ignite is also runs in parallel. There's 2 conferences on at the same time, hence the audience figures go up somewhat, the attendance figures go up. There's also, they run an event for CIOs at the same time, using part of the same venue. Yeah, so that does push the numbers up. And then, yes, as Leslie talks about, there's the baby tour, which is Ignite the tour. So if you want a little taster, I guess, it's almost like, it's like the smorgasbord of Ignite. You can go to 1 day or 2 day events, which is held, I think, so, 20, 30 locations around the world, starting several weeks after the main Florida event, where you can get a little bit of insight. So you can do, that networking is still going to be available to you. Perhaps the expo hall isn't the size of 5 Wembleys. It has more than, though it has more than 8 vendors in it. You do get a just slight flavour, and you still get that interaction. Members of the product groups are there. There are community presentations, because Ignite's not just about products. There's lots of sessions from customers and community experts, people wanting to share their knowledge. So you get that balance, not just about this is what's shiny new in the product, this is how we expect you to use it, but also how people are actually using it and interpreting it, which is what Ignite kind of tries to strike a balance with. And then the tour, I say, just little bite-sized chunks of that. Yes, you will get a few product launches on day one. Might know what some of these are, but if I told you, I'd have to kill you. But you will get some big announcements on the first day, and then they'll trickle the rest out through the week. So even if you're not going, it's worth watching the live stream of the keynote, following that through. Satya will make some references to things that I reckon will delight and excite your day.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, no, what I really like is you can kind of follow paths. You can find an interest area, follow a path around, pursue a particular interest, and there's so much opportunity in all of their events. Whether they be the developers event, which I've been to a build a while ago, or whether it be the huge events, there's an opportunity to choose what you're interested in and have enough selection to fill your entire day with your particular area of expertise or subject matter, rather than it being sort of a linear single event where you might only really have a deep interest in 1 or 2 topics, and the rest of it isn't something that you're quite as passionate about.
Yeah.
Simon, and you'll probably say, "Oh, I can't remember," but how many times do you think you presented at the Ignite events?
I think I've presented a dozen or more times now. Yeah.
Wow.
A bit of a rock star.
Yeah. The first couple have been talking about our customer story and how we did adoption at Mott MacDonald, what our approach was, and then in latter ones I've been talking about more the difficult subjects, well, maybe not difficult subjects, the more some technical ones around Power Apps and Flow, but also what it's like to be an IT pro and what the future of being an IT pro really means to people, right? So
one of the interesting things that I think it was you and Darryl Webster were probably one of the first ones to bring to the front about this, is about the word of empathy.
Yeah.
And and I love that, and I've kind of built on that as well in my area of user adoption. But can you explain how that fits, how the IT pro the role of the IT pro is changing around the word of empathy? Sure.
Yeah. So so you pick up on a session that we did last year, which is actually available through the tech community if people want to listen to it or look at the slides at least. So empathy is really important, because in IT traditionally it's been very much build it and they will come, or you'd launch a new feature upon someone and you'll be wondering why they didn't use it, or they wouldn't take it up, or you might get perplexed why they've reacted in a certain way. And one of the key skills for understanding all that is empathy. And I think as as a profession, I think empathy has been late to the party, and people people have not understood the power of empathy, of actually understanding that if you do impose this upon someone, right, they've had 20 changes that week. This is another change. You're asking them to take 5 minutes out of their day on a day when they're meant to be getting something really important out to reboot their computer for some critical updates. And having that empathy with people actually makes the adoption process easier and makes the relationship with people easier. So, we touched upon that in our evolution of the IT Pro session. Has been a sort of a really important soft skill for IT pros to learn.
When we sort of frame empathy, then you also get a sense of, in order to really be truly empathetic, you do need some bringing together of the organization and synchronization of the different things that they are doing, because you could have one part of your organization that's really thinking about your end user, but multiple simultaneous things coming in at different strands at different times would still create the perception of that lack of empathy. So perhaps you can sort of help us understand a little bit of how do you take the concept of empathy and make that into an organizational wide concern?
Yeah, that's I guess that's the secret sauce as well, right? And so,
well, I'm challenging you now.
Perhaps I shouldn't give my recipe away. No, there is a point, right? So if you've got team A, say IT inflicting changes, and you've got human resources doing something else, and you've got communications, right? And you're just peppering your staff with changes, notifications, news, communications. Each one of those groups, they can take an empathetic approach each, right? And if they start saying, actually, you know what, I see these people are getting some stuff from team over here, right? I can see that. Right? A lot of this is very visible. They're probably getting the same emails, they're reading the same internet announcements, seeing the same Yammer posts and so on. So that's where you can start, right? It's actually being a bit more observant as a different group, right? And also asking yourself at a group level, asking yourself questions, what would I feel if I got that, right? What if this happened to me then? And that's where you start to take it up to the organizational scale. And I guess in like small medium enterprises, it's that's gets the whole organizational scale, and you might get one or two people doing it. Then it's really to start people having conversations about, these are the changes that we're going to do, these are the things we're going to communicate, right? Even if it's the informal, once a month, these are the things we're looking to do, and start bringing those key players together. On the large enterprise scale, you really need to grab your comms team by the scruff of its neck and just pull them together and say, look, all these disparate teams are going to be doing stuff, right? We need you to help us with the fire hose, because we can't turn it off. But what we need to do is need your help in directing it at the right time in the right places, and building up things like communication grids that that this division have been absolutely nailed, because their employee resource platform, their ERP, has just been changed yesterday, and they have no idea how to do their timesheets, right? Don't focus on them, focus on these people, and start building up that grid of communications. And that will help then drive, a more empathetic approach. And also, don't call your staff or your colleagues users. I know I'll slip into it from time to time, right? They are customers at the end of the day. They consume your services that you provide. So if you moment you get into a customer mindset, you then start changing your approach. If they're just using a tool, they're using a hammer, right? It doesn't work. If you start thinking like that, thinking they're customers, and you'll start creating some magic.
Brilliant advice. And Leslie, you were going to follow up, I believe.
Yeah, so the approach that we use at Mint Tulip around empathy is what we call our discovery phase, and that kicks off with interviews and focus groups right across the board of the company. So not just with the senior leaders, but across all the roles at frontline, middle management, and right up to the board level. And depending on the size of the company, it's the ratio of how many interviews and focus groups that we run. But it actually turns out to be quite a cathartic session for the staff involved, and we go in with all about our ears, rather than us telling them anything about. We don't talk about products. We just ask them how they currently work, try and get out of them the processes that this is the key thing, processes that are driving them mad at the moment and maybe slowing them down, and different systems that they're on that might not be anything to do with Microsoft systems, but just systems that they're using, and how we can maybe move them out of different systems and put them maybe into the Microsoft space in the cloud. So from that we create personas. So yeah, we don't call them user personas, they are just personas and a bit of profiling, and then from that we create storyboards using the products within Windows 10 and Office 365, and show them basically art of the possible about how they could be working, not in the future, but the very near future, how they could be working now. So it is a very empathetic approach. We get to know the customers really quite quickly and get a real understanding of the culture of the company. And both Dan and I have been involved in these running these interview sessions now, and it's a really lovely thing to be involved with. I love doing it.
I think there seems to be a step shift in that realization, and Seth Godin had a good metaphor for this, where he says, what does a person want when they buy a drill bit? And the manufacturer's answer will be, well, they want to make a hole of 6 millimeters, but that's not what they want, is it? What they want is to hang a picture. Well, that's not what they want either. What they really want is to create something, to create some kind of utility, to create some kind of end goal or end product. And it's about trying to see through the initial functional solution to whatever it is, and really dive into what those wants are, and then understand how we can continue to deliver those and be sympathetic of those, and equally how we can realize what the don't wants are and how we can ensure that those don't wants are. And I think that has really important inroads into how we start articulating transformation, understanding those wants and those desires, equally understanding what people don't want, and trying to envision, that future workplace. And for me, I'm seeing a definitive shift really in the targeting for Microsoft events to be looking at that future workplace and looking at that overall vision. And Simon, what do you think right now are some of the key topics, key areas for focus when we talk about the future workplace?
Yeah, and you hit a good point, right? Because active listening doesn't stop on rolling stuff out. Actually, going to these events is you will find being an active listener, an active participant. And I guess in terms of these events, it's a two-way street, right? There'll all be members of the product groups there. They will be actively listening for how you have applied or used or attend your hopes, fears and aspirations for something they've been talking about. So there's that two-way place. In terms of the modern workplace and Microsoft's events, I think there's a feeling, I think if it's a conversation in 2016 when modern workplace was a little bit nebulous, actually a modern workplace, to take it back to the Victorian era a little bit, it was a little bit of a nebulous sort of concept. I mean, Office 365 was gaining traction, and more and more people moved over to it since then. And I think that conversation around creating a better workplace, a more effective and more efficient workplace, I think that's matured. And I think the focus of these events now is, what do we do now that the workplace has matured into this slightly different way of working? They're starting to get used to this constancy of change that they're going through. Satya said, I think it was 2 years ago at Ignite, that every company would become an IT company at the end of the day. And that's because technology is going to be at the heart of everything we do. And so I think that the focus of these events has shifted to, what can technology now do for you to take you forward? And I think that's why you're going to get a lot of focus on automated intelligence, from helping you with your my analytics space in terms of you understanding where do you spend your time, to intelligent meeting room bookings, to just doing those tasks which actually don't make you that effective, right? And doing that stuff for you, or providing you simple ways to teach something, to do something for you, or discover something, make that discovery process easier. And I think that's a big focus of the events. Certainly Future Decoded, that is a big part of what Future Decoded will be talking about, will be the positioning of AI. Whereas I think Ignite will be more about, well, this is how you apply it. So you'll see lots of the products will have these additional AI features with them at Ignite, but you'll see at Future Decoded that conversation is being taken on further about how do we create a better workplace? How do we avoid it being an episode of Person of Interest, right? Where the machine knows exactly what you want to do, for example. It'll just give you those 9-digit numbers and to tell you, right, this is going to happen. You need to deal with this. That kind of conversation, that tricky conversation, is the one you'll hear at Future Decoded.
Yeah, and it's a conversation that has a different answer for every company, for every person, depending on what you're interested in, and the how that combination is going to look and be implemented is different. I think that's why it's so important to be digging into that conversation. And Leslie, there's several tracks over at Future Decoded, so I'm gonna pin you down and say, which one are you most interested in here? Right, so developing customer trust, empowering the digital workplace, transforming business outcomes, designing a smarter workplace, bringing plans to life. And I ask you because I know you've already started planning out where you're going to go, right?
Yeah.
So did you start with the tracks when you were thinking about which to look at, or did?
I didn't start with the tracks. I started with kind of like anything around user adoption, which
Right.
must be customer adoption now. It's the new thing, not new thing, but the different way of saying it. And of course, I'm going to be interested in anything to do with diversity and inclusion, because I was amazed at the time when this first opened up. So this was at the Microsoft Tech Summit in Birmingham at the NEC in January 2018, when Shona Chi and Anna Chu and Dux Raymond, Dux is a rock star MVP, and he facilitated a panel discussion that I was completely surprised I got invited to take part in. Again, me thinking that I am not worthy, how did I get to this space? But I was invited to go along. And what I brought to that speaker opportunity was saying that the diversity and inclusion that I see myself being the flag bearer for was around the space of digital change and nurturing digital change inside organizations, and not just about the IT guys switching everything on and then walking away, but it's people like me and you and our colleagues at Mint Tulip who go in and actually help make sense of it after we've done the discovery phase, and helping them with the appropriate training around culture change and new ways of working and new behaviours. So that's where I accidentally stepped into that area, because I started to feel a little bit uncomfortable that anyone that was an MVP who talked about user adoption and engagement with the tools were sort of being treated like a red-headed stepchild, as they call it in America, and made to feel slightly uncomfortable that being an MVP in that space, you maybe are not felt to be as worthy as someone who's got a technical background. And I sat on that stall on the stage at the NEC thinking, oh my God, I'm going to feel like I'm shooting myself in the foot. But I got a lovely round of applause at the end of it. I was absolutely amazed, and Dux was really supportive of what I was saying. And it kind of went on from there with I seem to kind of cross over at the exact right time where Shona Chi was beginning to start the diversity, the D&I community that has now gone from that event, gone around the world. It was a huge at Ignite that took place a couple of months later, and then it's gone on and on and on. And I'm just was delighted and quite stunned that I was part of that right from the early days back in, well, it's only January 2018. It feels like it was longer ago than that. So so anything that where we are talking about diversity and inclusion now, of course, accessibility as well. I'm going to be super interested in going along to those sessions, and I've actually pulled out. This is my sheet here that I've got off a piece of paper. trying to work out what sessions are crossing over and everything. So I've got about 4 that I want to be at, and they're all at the same time, and then there's another 4 in the afternoon that I want to be at the same time. On day 1 there's 166 sessions, so it's super interesting, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm presenting in a 20-minute session with a guy, one of our customers, Mike Colshaw, who's an IT CTO, and we're going to be talking about how we've helped nurture Microsoft Teams at NHS through the CCG up in Bury in Manchester. So we're doing a quick session about that.
I think it's so important, isn't it? There was a period in the IT space across the whole industry when diversity and inclusion was an afterthought. Accessibility as well. You know, it is fairly recent that it's become something that's had a very, very strong focus, and it's very heartening to see Microsoft committing to the extent that they have into that space. And Simon, I'm interested in your thoughts around what was it, do you think, that created that shift and that renewed focus in it? Is it that technology now is getting to the point where it's so pervasive, it's so in people's lives that it has to be there? What do you think were the levers for that?
I think people realise that if a product isn't accessible by design, they don't get the usage that they're expecting.
Yeah,
and it's a really super simple equation. And so I think once they realise that, actually showing people the accessible tooling that's available actually lowers the bar to entry. You know, I don't know how many of you have used the reading mode in Edge, right?
Yeah.
How much that makes it so much easier just to read text, right? Yes, that feature was developed from an accessibility perspective, but for selling adoption of technology, that's great, right? It allows you to focus, allows you to get on what you need to do. And I think that's why I liked Future Decoded, because in terms of events, they kind of broke the mold in terms of they didn't just put accessibility first last year. They put it first throughout the event itself in terms of making sure that there's quiet areas, everything was set up, all the walking routes, everything was done. They thought through every single detail, not just about we're going to talk about the great things in the technology, but we're also going to make the whole experience as accessible as possible. And I think a lot of attendees took that away as like a subconscious learning. Wasn't it really easy to go there? Wasn't it really easy to do that? Wasn't really easy to find my way around? Could I? I think that then went back and helped them. And what I loved about it is, Jenny Leigh Fury will be talking again. I think she's speaking on the Sunday in one of the keynotes. Amazing speaker, and putting the real perspective into why things like accessibility and D&I are super, super important. No doubt you'll have Hector Minto, who's sort of the Microsoft UK superstar when it comes to this space. He'll be leaping around everywhere with his passion for OneNote and all sorts of other things, really driving that agenda forward. But we talk about creating a smarter, better workplace, more efficient workplace. That's the low-hanging fruit, right? Accessibility by design.
So let's sort of take a step back a little bit and say, I'm fairly new to Microsoft products, don't even really know what 365 is, not really familiar with a lot of the offerings that are out there, attending my first event to get a sense of what could be in store for the future for me, for my organization. What are the kind of conversations do you think are the good kind of conversations to get stuck in on, the good talks to get involved in, and good places to start? I'll throw that one over to you, Leslie.
Well, again, it's my perspective and what I'm interested in. So there's the keynote that kicks off at 9:30, and then the session that I'm in actually follows the keynote, which is quite amazing, really. So that's at 11:30 on the floor, and that's managing digital change in the NHS Bury CCG. Then I want to go on to practical steps to create a diverse and inclusive company, and our MVP friend Chris Slemp has had something to do with creating that session. I don't think he's coming along, but I know he's helped with building up that session. Who's now customer success manager. And then we go on to our managing director session, Rob Mossop with Microsoft Ollie Heron. They go on to a speaker panel, and that is Embrace the Fear and Own It, how to drive transformational change in very, very big companies. Then I've got this awkward situation around 4 sessions at the same time, but there is a panel discussion that I'm really interested in around what will AI mean to healthcare. And this has surprised me as well, that I've come into this space, into the technology space, after working in global healthcare for about 20 years in support role, and then I've stepped back into an area of technology where they're now focusing on how they can help healthcare for the greater good of everyone, which has been absolutely just heartwarming and amazing to be part of a massive company that really cares so much about the future of our healthcare. It's been absolutely wonderful. So that's just a couple of sessions that I'm interested in. There's also one around transforming the lives and something to do with how they're helping with guide dogs for the blind. So I'm interested in that session as well. So yeah, anything that's a bit more, I suppose, hearts and minds and touchy-feely, I'm going to be going to those sessions.
Yeah, there's no product stuff in there.
No, I can't help it. I mean, it's, I need to know about the products as well, and I'm learning all the time. With the technical team at Mint Tulip, yeah. But anything that's a little bit more Azure and Power BI apps and things like that, it does kind of like, got to admit it, it goes a little bit too far for me, but there's plenty other sessions, to suit someone that's not so, involved in the technical space. So it is beginning to open up, I think, for these kind of conferences. It's not just about, technical and product. It is more about how we are helping to make lives better.
So I think to your question, right, which is, if you're relatively new to this, there are some hot topics, right? I think the first thing you need to do is decide which one you're going to go to. Now, okay, Microsoft Ignite 2019, I should get with the program. You've got to call it Microsoft Ignite. There is another conference series of a similar name. If you could get tickets to it, I mean, it's completely sold out. And if you could beg, borrow and steal probably about £7,000 off your boss to actually go to it, it's not a cheap event once you add the flights in from Europe and things like that from the rest of the world. That really is, if you're new, and that's how I learned, that is the sheep dip of knowledge.
Right.
You will get, and you will go and learn stuff, right? Future Decoded, if you're new to the industry, but you want to see where the future trajectory is, you're not really worried about today. Yeah, you will hear some today stuff, but if you're worried about, you want to hear about what 3 years look like, 5 years look like, you go to that. If you can't afford the sheep dip, or you're just really just want to dip your toe a little bit, then I would go to Ignite the Tour London in January. And I think the hot topics you're going to hear for the current day stuff, even probably at Decoded, obviously Microsoft Teams. Microsoft are really, really, really pushing hard now on the journey from removal of Skype for Business to Teams. And there's a pretty hard timeline involved in that, and you will go and learn some information about that. I would definitely pick that up as some hot topics. If you can, pick out a few deeper dive sessions, especially if you're new to this and you're thinking Teams isn't just a purple window, right? But behind it, there's a whole level of complexity behind it. So pick out some sessions around groups and understanding how the mechanics of these things work. You don't need to understand right down to the PowerShell unless PowerShell is your thing, or C#, but just that level of information that there's constructs like a pervasive security identity that goes through the platform. Go and pick those things up. I think if you're new to it, pick up things around the accessibility stories, around how the Office tools, there will be sessions on that, especially little 20-minute breakouts. They're the really great bite-sized learning sessions around the reader views and Edge and the powerful things that OneNote can do. OneNote is the great unsung hero of the Office suite, right? If you've not used it, it is killer. I mean, it makes Word look like the typewriter. And so go and pick those things up. Pick up the feeling of the change in how IT is being delivered, and organizations are having to shift their IT to meet the new construct of serving customers. right? Away from the, dare I say it, ServiceNow ticket ITIL driven space. If you're new to it, that's fine. You don't need to worry about that baggage, but you got to know that there's a whole load of professionals going to be coming with that baggage. Just go and learn what the future space will look like. I think I would do that if I was new to this. And don't worry, loads of it's recorded. Catch up. Make sure you put your hands up, ask questions, bug the presenters at the end, track them down, and just make as much as you can out of it.
I think that's a great summary from both of you. So thanks so much for that. And yeah, for me, I think, especially as Microsoft are targeting adoption, for their licensing, for all the things that they do, right? So they want more people to use their products, right? And the way that they do that is they get feedback and they have conversations and they turn what was formerly not just them, the whole industry. Formerly, they used to have their 6-month service pack rollouts, and everyone had to hang on with all the bugs for 6 months until the thing came out, until it finally got fixed, right? All their work packages, service packages. Whereas now it's so much more iterative, and these events are a representation of you becoming part of a process and becoming part of the future development of and the community around something which is a part of everybody's working day lives. And I think if you can, for me, that's what when I started coming into those events and conferences with that mindset of how can I learn, but how can I also contribute and be a part of this bigger picture. So for me, I like that sort of combination of the keynote talks, which are great, and I'll watch the killer ones, but then I'll catch up on the recordings for the other ones, because I also want to get involved in the chat. I want to hear what other people are saying, what the customers are doing, and how they're reacting to it, and what are the key challenges, and getting that sense of, from the people on the ground, what is it that I could be expecting? So for me, my recommendation would be, that sort of combination of the two. Pick out the talks that you think are going to interest you, that relate to you. They're going to be within the roadmap of what's changing and what's happening within your organization sort of now or within the next 6 months, or within your program, or however it's structured. But balance that with good conversations from people in similar stages, or maybe 6 or 12 months ahead of you. And then sponge all that information of things that you should be aware of and thinking about and be knowledgeable about, so that you can start addressing these things and being aware of them up front, so they don't come through to you as a surprise. For me, that's where I got the most out of it. Things like talking to people about how did you configure your Teams instance, right? It's a huge conversation, very difficult conversation when it comes to groups and governance, and a conversation that takes a very long time to be able to resolve in large organizations, right? So that's the kind of thing that you want to be ahead of.
Yeah.
And if you can get that feedback from people and say, this is what we tried, this is what worked, learn from their trials and errors and their successes, and use that to accelerate your own journey, then for me, that's where I see the real value coming out of these things.
Yeah. Feed off the power of community.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's do a little quick roundup then. So I'll put you on the spot. So last thing, in terms of Future Decoded, right? If you could only attend one thing in the whole event, right? I'm going to put you on the spot here, Leslie. What would it be? You've already got your schedule ahead of you, right? So what would the one thing be? What's the mustn't miss for you?
Well, I mustn't miss the one I'm in.
Apart from the ones you're in, let's assume that you're not going to miss those.
It's got to be. Hang on, let me make sure I get the title right. It's got to be Embrace the Fear and Own It to Drive Transformational Change, because our leader, Rob Mossop, is going to be on the speaker panel. So
you're cheating now. You're cheating. Simon, how about you?
You're just trying to you're just trying to get a pay rise or something, aren't you? Really, just that's just not on. I tell you what, I'm looking forward to hearing from Major Tim Peake, right?
Oh,
not often you hear from someone who's been to space. There's only a few hundred people have still, left this Earth's gravity, right? It's just going to be amazing. Absolutely, to hear from him, the role that technology has played in his life, how it features in space, or how it's pervades through his life. I think that'd be, I'm really, really looking forward to it. and how he's empowering the future. Because we're today, right, and children tomorrow, to use the horrible pun catchphrasey thing, and talk about STEM and driving technology and education, maths and understanding through schools, so we get our future right. So we're not listening to Samaritan and it's the machine calling the shots, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great call. I watched him in the end of year Christmas lectures, because he often, when he was in space, he'd be beaming in and doing the Christmas lectures live, and teaching physics from up in the space station. But yeah, he's such an inspiring science communicator. I saw Mark Kelly, NASA astronaut Mark Kelly, who's another now retired big astronaut, at another conference, and what I really love about NASA is their whole vision and the unified purpose they have behind their organization, and that ability to bring such diversity together from varied places and then operate so synchronously and efficiently in achieving a single sort of unified vision. I think that's the real mecca for a lot of organizations, and hearing people talk about that kind of conversation and that kind of organizational operation would be really inspiring. So that was going to be mine.
Sorry.
No, I should come up with another one though. But that's great. No, thank you so much.
I saw Jim Lovell. Is it Jim Lovell from Apollo 13? Was he there? Is it Jim Lovell?
Yeah, the astronaut.
Yeah.
Jim Lovell.
Yeah, he was a speaker at a conference that I went to through work a couple of years ago, when we held a conference at NASA. An elderly gentleman now, but he, it was unbelievable just, to think that he very nearly didn't get back to Earth. That story was just off the scale, wasn't it? But there he was in front of us, as I think he must have been in his late 70s, early 80s as a guest speaker. Absolutely priceless.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for attending and joining today. Really, really appreciate it. Last thing, Simon, where can people find you?
You can find me in the usual haunts, which is LinkedIn. You can come and stalk and tag and join up with me on LinkedIn. Just search for Simon Denton. There's only a few of us. I'm sure you'll make it. I also inhabit Twitter. You can check me out. My tag is BuildBod. I hark back to my engineering days when I used to build things for real. But yeah, BuildBod, active on Twitter. You find yourself in the Microsoft tech community. You'll find me there too. The usual places.
Brilliant. And Leslie, don't forget Teddy here. Hashtag. So, where can people find you?
I'm LinkedIn, Leslie Crook, rather than Leslie, what my name was. I'm on Twitter as Leslie_Wolan, which was it's an acronym for Working Out Loud in a Network. That's what, if you don't know what that actually stood for, when I first started to work as a freelance consultant. So yeah, Leslie_Wolan, Working Out Loud in a Network.
There you go. And to find out more about Teddy, there will be another video on that.
Yeah.
All right. Ted. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for that. Really appreciate your help. Anyone who's watching, make sure you leave a comment. Let us know, start the conversation, and talk to us about what you're looking forward to. And if you're looking for any advice on where to go and some things to focus on to get specific outcomes in, then leave them in the comments and we'll give you a hand with that. So thanks, everyone, for attending.